NFL free agency is upcoming and everybody's talking about the top free agents for 2025. But what if I told you some of the most impactful signings are the ones that nobody is talking about? I've spent years breaking down NFL rosters, and today I'll be breaking down the 5 most overlooked free agents who can change NFL rosters in 2025. And we'll start with the former Steelers quarterback. He's now a free agent, could definitely return to the team, but this is Justin Fields, who as of this recording is still 25 years old, and he will be entering his age 26 season in 2025. Now, in my opinion, he's coming off of an improved season, a somewhat impressive season, especially compared to his previous year's results. And that's because in his first season with the Steelers in their Arthur Smith offense, he started 6 games. He had a career-high 66% completion percentage. He started off the year with Pittsburgh before Russell Wilson got healthy, and he was 4-2 as a starter with only 1 interception. And he's still a young quarterback, a dual-threat quarterback who's coming off of an improved season, a former first-round quarterback. Somebody in the marketplace is going to benefit from him, or at least be encouraged by those types of traits. And the Steelers offense was kind of built well for him in terms of a running offense, an Arthur Smith offense. He ranked top 10 in quarterback rushing yards per game with 29 per game, and this was only over those 6 starts to start the season. Imagine if he had more run with a team, maybe the Steelers this year or another team that we'll get into in a moment. Now, we finally got to see Fields in an offense that was more built around him last year compared to his time with the Chicago Bears. Last year, he had a much improved offensive line and an offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith, who was kind of well suited for Fields' skill set. But there was still a concern for Fields outside of Russell Wilson lurking during the beginning parts of the season. There wasn't a lot of playmakers on this team outside of George Pickens. So because of this, there's still this untapped potential with Justin Fields if he lands in the right spot with more playmakers. In terms of the positives for Fields, he's still a young player. He has mobile upside, and he's coming off of a nice season. And when you think about guys like Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, if you just put this guy in the right spot, he might be able to excel even more. When we look at landing spots for Fields, I want to look at the Steelers to begin with. Both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are now free agents. They don't even have anybody right now as of, I think it's Kyle Allen, even he might even be a free agent as well, as their starting quarterback. It seems like I would assume they bring at least one of these guys back, and if you're going to bring back one, why not bring back Justin Fields, who showed some promise last year, who, if anybody is going to give you a chance to excel in the postseason, maybe it's the guy with a little bit more upside due to his dual threat ability and youth. And just looking at Fields in terms of this quarterback free agency class, outside of Sam Darnold, who might get franchise tag, there's not a lot of guys out there. And it's also a weaker draft class at the quarterback position, which takes us to the next possible landing spot, and it's the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, who as of right now have the #1 pick, if we pull it up, in the NFL draft, as you can see right here, according to NFL.com. This is the draft order. You can see they also list their biggest needs, and quarterback is the first one on here because, yes, they need that. If you look at their quarterback page, it's basically Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. We saw these guys last year, and it was brutal. I mean, it was a roller coaster anytime Will Levis was out there, and we know what to expect from Mason Rudolph at this time. Now, of course, they have the #1 pick in the NFL draft, so they could take somebody like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, the top quarterback prospects. But recently in a press conference, the Titans GM said he would not pass on a generational talent. And if we look at Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 prospects, #1 is Abdul Carter, the pass rusher from Penn State. He's a blue chip, you can say generational talent. And then Travis Hunter, the cornerback wide receiver from Colorado. These are the 2 guys, the only 2 guys outside of Ashton Genty, a running back, maybe the tight end as well, Tyler Warren from Penn State. Those are the only guys who are like blue chips, best at their position. The only generational talents, maybe Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, none of these quarterbacks though. Which leaves the opportunity for Justin Fields to maybe go to Tennessee, then they draft an Abdul Carter or a Travis Hunter to add to their team as well if they went out there and wanted to sign Fields for a relatively cheap price point. I think these are the possible landing spots, the Titans and the Steelers. Now, the next position is extremely important for any NFL offense, just as teams like the Cincinnati Bengals, the Miami Dolphins this past season, who had bad offensive lines. And with that position, we're going to look at Kevin Zeitler, who is now 34 years old. He's turning 35 soon. So there's honestly, he's a little bit older. That is probably the biggest concern. Maybe there's concerns on if he even returns to the NFL. As of right now, it seems like that's going to be the case. Now, Kevin Zeitler, he spent 3 seasons before this past one with the Ravens. He was great there. And this past season, he signed a 1-year deal with the Detroit Lions. And man, oh man, was Kevin Zeitler good. If we pull this up right here, Kevin Zeitler ranked top 5 overall at the guard position overall in terms of PFF blocking grades, top 5 overall. If you pull it up in terms of what he ranked on run blocking alone, he was 2nd. So he was good in both of these areas, pass protection, run blocking. He was a dominant force when it comes to run blocking and clearing waves there. And he did play on the Lions offensive line, arguably the best offensive line in the NFL. So sure, you're going to get propped up a little bit when all the guys around you are doing their job as well. Now, some of the positives for Kevin Zeitler are that he's arguably coming off of the best season of his career. He's durable. He's played at least 15 or more games in 10 straight seasons, and he's a big physical and reliable option in both the run and pass blocking games. Now, in terms of potential landing spots, we have to just start with saying, why does he not come back to the Detroit Lions, where he had one of the best years of his career? When you're putting him up next to guys like Frank Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, Penei Sewell, all these guys who are arguably all pros or were on the all pro teams, you put him next to these guys, he's on another strong line where he doesn't have to kind of be, I would say, the best player on that line. He could still be the 3rd or 4th best and have a quality season. What makes this a little bit more appealing is that when you look at the Lions cap space right now, and again, this is all projected cap space based on who they sign in 2025, but if you look at the projected cap space right now, the Lions are right here. This is 9th on the list. So they do have some money to spend. They have $45 million, again, projected cap space. They have some other areas that they do need to address, which is going to be the defense, number 1 overall. They have to improve their defense. Maybe the draft is where they do that, but a lot of their allocation probably going to the defensive side, but why not bring back Zeitler if he's willing to come back for cheap? Now, another potential landing spot, and this is really should be a priority for the Cincinnati Bengals, is the Bengals. I mean, they ranked 29th in the NFL in run blocking and pass protection last year. A bottom 5 offensive line, arguably the worst offensive line in the NFL. Just ask Joe Burrow. I mean, that guy had an MVP caliber season despite having no time to throw. That's how good Joey Burrow was last year. In fact, Burrow was sacked 48 times last year, which ranks top 5 in the NFL. So they have to improve that offensive line, Cincinnati, and at the guard position, Zeitler would help them do it. Another offense that desperately needs to improve their offensive line is the Jaguars. It looks like Brandon Sheriff, one of their best offensive linemen, might not be returning this year. Mitch Morris is on the final year of his current contract at center, so they need to improve this offensive line. An offensive line that last season ranked 26th in the NFL in run blocking and were a bottom half of the league team in pass protection, hence why Trevor Lawrence was getting hurt. So again, this is another team where Zeitler could potentially come in and look good. The one downside is the fact that he's now 35 years old. Could he have potentially peaked because he was on a good Eagle or a Lions offensive line last year? He's been solid though for the past 4 to 5 years when we date back to his time with the Ravens, so I do think he's a nice quality signing that's currently going under the radar. And speaking of under the radar options in this free agency period, let's look at Marquise Brown, who is 27 years old, which is a little bit older for wide receivers, but relative to this free agency class, it's actually quite young. If you recall, Brown signed a 1-year deal this past offseason with the Chiefs, where he got injured on the first or second snap of preseason and didn't return until week 15. A bummer. If we were to go through his game logs, he only played in 5 games, 2 regular season games towards the end of the year where he was actually pretty highly involved. You look over here, 8 targets, 7 targets. Then the postseason comes and his play was fine overall in terms of the Chiefs rotating their players, but he didn't really stand out. 2 targets, no catches in the first round of the playoffs. 3 catches for just 35 yards in the second round. And in the Super Bowl, even though they're trailing a ton, just 2 catches for 15 yards. But if you watch that Super Bowl, the Chiefs offensive line fell apart and there was really no downfield passing to be had at all for the offense. And quite frankly, the fact that he returned at all from an injury that seemed like it was going to be season ending is honestly a win in itself. We shouldn't judge his performance in a couple of days coming back from a serious injury off of that. In terms of the specific positives for Marquise Brown, his younger age, he's a proven downfield winner, and he has experience as a number 1 option in the past. He also was in the postseason, despite being hobbled when you look at the Chiefs wide receivers. He was number 2 on the team in targets. He earned 13 postseason targets despite not being 100%, only behind first round pick Xavier Worthy. Now for potential landing spots, I think the one that maybe makes the most sense is just coming right back to the Chiefs. When you look at the Chiefs lineup, they have Xavier Worthy. He started to break out. I don't think they re-signed DeAndre Hopkins in his older age. And if we scroll down here, we know that Sky Moore is somebody, well, not Sky Moore, Rashee Rice is somebody that dealt with a serious injury. He's probably not going to be 100% to start next season. So why not bring in a veteran who's now going to be another year healthier from the shoulder injury, and Marquise Brown, who you just signed for a cheap contract, 1 year, $7 million, probably can get him cheap again. But if he was to leave the Chiefs, there's some pretty exciting places that he can sign. Whether it's for real life or fantasy football, or if your favorite team is the Commanders, this would be awesome. Imagine pairing him up with Terry McLaurin as the number 2 downfield primary option for Jaden Daniels and his big arm. That's very exciting. Diami Brown, he started to flash at the end of the year, wasn't consistent. Luke McCaffrey, a rookie who didn't get a lot of run. Is that because of his skill set or the other guys ahead of him? Either way, he didn't really show much. Omadide Zaccheaus, a journeyman at the wide receiver position. Look at some of these other guys. Jamison Crowder, probably any year now from retiring. Noah Brown, I don't expect to be back with this team, but we shall see. So I think Terry McLaurin plus a Marquise Brown, especially if he's cheap, that starts to create a pretty dynamic offense. It was already that in Washington last year, even better now heading into 2025. And then another team we should shout out is maybe the most obvious team here, and this would be the New England Patriots, who currently have the most projected cap space. They are the favorites to land T. Higgins. We'll see if he doesn't come back to the Bengals. If he ends up going there, they have all the opportunity in the world in terms of a earlier draft pick, all the money in cap spending. These are the types of guys they should go out and spend. They should go get a Marquise Brown to be the number 2 option on their team and sign somebody like a T. Higgins as well, or an Amari Cooper for cheap. Because the Patriots' current wide receivers out there right now for one, Drake May in his second year aren't great. Demario Douglas is a fine number 2 at best, maybe number 3 for a team. Outside of that, Jalen Polk didn't do much this past year. KJ Osborne as a free agent didn't do much. Javon Baker had a terrible rookie season, both on and off the field. Kayshon Boutte came on towards the end of the year, was earning 5 or 6 targets a game, but nothing significant or consistent there. So Marquise Brown to one of those teams is appealing, and there's a bunch of other teams that need wide receivers as well. But now let's get into this next position, which is oh so important. And again, it takes us back to the offensive line position, where you get a 26-year-old offensive lineman right now, a guard in Tevin Jenkins. He's kind of scrambled across a bunch of different positions. We'll get into that. He's turning 27 this year. It's rare to find a talented guard or even just a talented player this young in general hitting the open market. Now, Tevin Jenkins, there's a lot that goes into this type of a player, and the Bears do need offensive linemen, so they could easily re-sign him. That's the team that he was on before this, the Bears. Now, the biggest concern for him is just his overall durability. In his NFL career, he's missed 45% of his games. And when we look at his injury history over the past 2 seasons alone, you're looking at a lot of lower body injuries, which are common in the NFL in general, but especially amongst offensive linemen. You have a calf injury here, an ankle injury, another ankle injury at the beginning of 2024. So 3 injuries this past year alone, and that was his healthier year. Year before that, you're getting a serious leg injury and a concussion that kept him out. So these last 2 years alone, he's struggling to get on the field. But the one bright spot is that this past season, he actually remained relatively healthy. You see, despite dealing with an ankle injury and a calf injury, it didn't actually keep him out of the games. Now, it kept him out of a couple, but he played in 14 games, which was by far the most that he's been able to play in his NFL career. Now, his shaky start to his career, though, does need that context. 1, the injuries, and 2, he's just been shuffling his positions. He's moved from guard to tackle to guard. He's moved all around the line. He hasn't had a stable home along the offensive line. Actually, the specifics were he was drafted as a right tackle, moved to left tackle, then moved to guard. So, like, yeah, you're changing your position. Your footwork is going to be an issue then. But in terms of the positives for Tevin Jenkins, he's a younger player. He's coming off of his healthiest season, and he's a big and extremely violent blocker. More specifically, according to PFF, he was the number 15 overall ranked offensive lineman this past year. He was top 20 in run blocking, and pass blocking is a little bit more of a concern, but again, he's changing positions, so we can give him a little bit of justice there, especially for a younger player who's dealt with a lot of injuries, but he was a top 15 player this year. He was the bright spot on a terrible Bears offensive line, which is a big reason why the Bears probably should re-sign him. I mean, look at the Bears' biggest needs, according to NFL.com for their draft article that just came out. Look at these biggest needs. They need guard help, they need center help, they need tackle help. Yes, the offensive line, if you watch the Bears this past season, for Caleb Williams, if they want to have any success with Ben Johnson, the new offensive coordinator there, they need a solid offensive line. So bringing back Tevin Jenkins should be a priority for this team, especially when you consider their cap space is very good here. You can see the Bears ranked top 10 in projected cap space with about $63 million available. The offensive line should be the priority. Bringing back Tevin Jenkins as a guard should be the priority. But if they weren't to bring him back, I do believe that the teams like the Bengals and the Jaguars that we mentioned earlier should be investing heavily in Tevin Jenkins or trying to get players like him. Now, before we get into this next wide receiver that nobody is talking about as actually a serious contributor for 2025, but I think that he is, I have to let you know about the sponsor of our program today, and that is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is pretty simple. You take the more or less on player statistics, combine them together, and try to win real money. And they actually have a really nice offer going on right now. All you have to do is play $5 over there, and you get $50 instantly as a credit. So how do you do that? Well, you can scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description below and sign up with code SAL23 to get that free $50 when you join today. PrizePicks is a spot where I love to place my player props, especially if you're in a state like I am, like Texas, where sports betting is not yet legal. You can use PrizePicks here, and you can take advantage of this great offer, getting a free $50 with that QR code on the screen or the link in the description below. Be sure to use code SAL23. Thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring this video. Now, that wide receiver that I was referring to that nobody is talking about, but I think could actually make a serious impact this year is going to be Darius Slayton, formerly of the New York Giants. Now, Slayton is still 28 years old, so he has a couple years left, I would say, of high production, and he could be this year's Darnell Mooney, a wide receiver who surprisingly gets a bigger contract than you were expecting from free agency. Now, to talk about Darius Slayton's career highlights, it might not be shocking to you or make you be like, oh, this is the best wide receiver ever, but let's go over here. 2024, if we scroll over to the receiving yards column, if you look at his receiving yards columns by year, 770, 700, 750, and 740 to start his career, he's had at least 700 receiving yards in 4 of his first 6 seasons, but keep this in mind. He's played with arguably the worst quarterback play, offensive line play, and offensive coordinator play during that entire stretch in the NFL. Despite that, Slayton has still been able to win, especially on the outside due to his 4.39 speed that he had at least when he was drafted. He has solid size as well. He's been a consistent option, multiple 100-yard games this past year alone for the New York Giants, and in his career, he's averaging about 15 yards per reception, which just shows you that he has the ability to win downfield and after the catch. And for what it's worth, he was the Giants' Walter Payton Man of the Year last year, which is maybe just something that helps him get signed to a team, probably going to be a nice locker room presence and just add to the culture. For team fits, I do like him being a cheaper option for a team like the Carolina Panthers, whether he becomes their number 2 or number 3 option. We know they have a lot of young players there. The rookies Xavier Legette and Jalen Colker had their flashes last year. Adam Thielen is getting extremely old at this point. I'm not sure you could really rely on him. Outside of that, though, not many guys here. Like, you have these 2 rookies, and that's it. I think the Panthers have to make a splash, probably in getting in the veteran market, and I think bringing in a guy like Darius Slayton for the cheap could be a nice option for you to have a reliable number 2, number 3. There's also the Raiders, who have the second most projected cap space right now. Jacoby Myers has been an awesome veteran who has proven he can win in the slot and out wide, but other than that at the wide receiver position, we know they have Brock Bowers, but other than Myers, not much here, right? You have Trey Tucker, didn't do anything with his opportunities last year. You scroll down, DJ Turner got a lot of snaps, didn't do much with them. I do believe that right now you're looking at Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, and if you could add Darius Slayton for cheap, pretty decent options for whoever is the quarterback there. And the final place I'll say is the Patriots, as we mentioned earlier, because they have a ton of money, need weapons for Drake May, and don't have those weapons right now. Now, I want to talk about a bonus player here, and I want to talk about Najee Harris. The running back free agent market isn't nearly as good as it was last year, and the NFL draft has a lot of strong running backs this year, so all the guys in this current free agency market are probably going to get downplayed, but I think Najee is still a solid option for a lot of teams. He's still just 27 years old, and when we look at his career so far to date, there's a lot to like. He's had at least 1,000 rushing yards in all 4 seasons, and he's averaging 1,380 total yards per year. Not to mention, when you look at his 4-year career right here, according to Player Profiler, his games played, he's played 17 games every single season. He has not missed a game in his career. So although he's not the most flashy and dynamic Jahmyr Gibbs type running back, he's still a durable guy who can run between the tackles and catch passes and pass protect. And when he was put behind a solid offensive line last year with a solid run-first coordinator in Arthur Smith, you actually saw some explosiveness. He ranked number 9 in evaded tackles. He was 11th in breakaway runs of 10-plus yards last year. To start his season, his first 8 games, he had at least 70 yards in every single game, so he was also productive and a part of the game plan. So I think a team that could use a guy like Najee Harris would be the Raiders. The Raiders who just played running back roulette last year. Zamir White started the season. He got banged up. He wasn't performing. Sincere McCormick was hot towards the end of the year, but can you really go into the year with McCormick as your starting RB? Amir Abdullah is like 33 at this point. Alexander Madison has not really shown much flashes the last 3 to 4 to maybe his entire NFL career. So bringing in a guy like Najee Harris gives you stability in the backfield that they definitely did not have last year. And as we mentioned earlier, the Raiders do have a lot of cap spending. They rank 2nd in projected cap space right now, but another team that is appealing to me would be the Denver Broncos, because Javonte Williams is a free agent. I don't think they're bringing him back. When you look after that, it'll be second-year player Audric Estime, who really wasn't all that great last year. He was banged up. He had some fumbles. He had a couple of flashes here and there. Jaleel McLaughlin, who's like a scat back. They don't have a proven guy here. And I think Sean Payton, as we've seen with many times in his career, wants a proven guy. You get Najee Harris to be the Mark Ingram for Sean Payton in this offense and be just a reliable option. I think we can see that happening and working out for us. Even if it's not the most flashy thing, I can see Najee picking up 15 touches a game. Now, another sneaky team that could be in the market to be adding a running back, I think either way they probably will in the NFL draft, is the Minnesota Vikings, who rank top 10 in projected cap space, as you can see right here. They could easily re-sign Aaron Jones, and I think they probably should, but if they let Aaron Jones hit the open market and try and get maybe a little bit cheaper at the position, I think that's where Najee Harris can come into play. I do believe Jones will be commanding more money in free agency, especially after a solid year with Minnesota of 1,500 plus yards. But if they let Aaron Jones go, this is their running back backfield. Cam Akers, Ty Chandler. I actually don't even think Cam Akers on the team. Ty Chandler at that point, you're probably in the open market looking for a veteran or the NFL draft, maybe both of those things. I believe they'll bring back Aaron Jones, but if not, they're going to need an RB, and Najee Harris does fit the bill. So these are the most overlooked players currently on the offensive side of the ball in free agency. In my opinion, the guys who are going overlooked, but can still have a significant impact on NFL teams and fantasy football in 2025. And if you want to see even more 2025 free agent videos, we have the 10 best wide receivers and 10 best available running backs in the free agency market right now available. I appreciate you all tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.